Welcome, everyone. Happy Saturday. I don't know what date it is for you guys, but it's Saturday here. I'm Claire Jones. I'm a queer fantasy romance writer, as well as a small publisher that supports other writers in getting their works shared with the world. And we are jumping on for my Marketing as Authors podcast, where I interview the amazing and inspiring authors in my network to discuss the marketing strategies that have hopefully propelled our careers forward in meaningful ways. If you're joining us, please like, comment, share below. Let us know that you're here. And today I'm talking to Aaron. So glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I found him in the world of TikTok as I find a lot of my guests. I'm like, hey, you, I want to talk to you.
Yeah, it is. It's a little embarrassing for me because I think I'm the least shameless or the most shameless on TikTok. And so when people say they found me there, I'm like, oh, like what video did you see? But it does mean that it's, getting me and my book out there. So that's good.
Yeah, well, I mean, shameless is a valid tactic, in my opinion.
Yeah, it kind of has to be that way.
Well, first, let's get a rundown of your books. What are they? How many have you written? And then what's coming up in the future?
So I've actually only published one book. It's called This Is Why They Hate Us. It's a young adult contemporary novel. It came out with Simon and Schuster Books for Young Readers. It
Excellent.
came out in 2022. And so I really that's the one I've been focusing on for, at this point over 3 years because I started marketing it before it came out. I write short stories, and so there is, an anthology called All the Ways a Heart Burns, and I have a story in there. And then I also have a bunch of stories for adults that have been published by various magazines and journals. But in case, in terms of just, a book, it would be This Is Why They Hate Us.
That's amazing. Is that where you're going to stop, or do you have more planned for the future?
So my publishing journey is kind of, I don't think it's that rare. But I did write 4 books before I got my
Mhm.
agent. And so one of those is horrible and will never see the light of day. And then 2 of those I like, and I would like to try and sell those, but not now. Like I think it's going to take some retooling in the future. What I really want to do is sell the books that I've written after This Is Why They Hate Us came out. I have a short story collection. I have a novel for adults, which is currently on submission, and then I have a second YA that I'm working on, and then another one that's kind of on submission in a weird way. It's on proposal, and so I don't know if it's going to sell.
Mm.
But yeah, I people will ask me like, "Oh, when are you writing the second book?" And I'm like, "I have." I'm like, there are a lot of finished manuscripts and proposals, but it's up to publishing to buy them, and in the meantime I'm sort of just biding my time.
So you write one-offs, you don't do series at all.
I have not written a series yet. No, I think that takes a level of commitment that just right now I'm not really thinking about. I
Mm.
have like I think a couple trilogy ideas, but they're sort of very vague, and I'm like, oh, I'll get to it, I'll get to it. But
Mm.
right now, no series in mind.
So did you start with short stories and then expand it into novels?
So I started writing a screenplay my freshman year of college.
Interesting.
I finished that screenplay, I think junior year of college. And then I sort of was like, there's a lot of voiceover. I'm going to reverse adapt it into a novel. And so I did that, finished it that same year, the junior year, and then also wrote my first short story junior year of college. And so it's kind of like these two, it's the same career, it's being a writer, but
Hmm.
in my mind, they branched off from each other. And
Mm.
it's like first YA book, first short story, and then traveling down those paths simultaneously.
Mm.
Um, and they never really, I haven't really had a short story that turned into a novel. I've always known from the beginning, this is a novel, this is a short story, and sort of kept them separate and have the characters be very, very different from each other. And
Hmm.
I think part of that is because for the YA, I want it to be ultimately uplifting and, fun and stuff. And then with the short stories, I can be more of my depressed self. I could do more rumination. It's, more adult, more, what I'm dealing with at the time versus YA, where I can sort of go back in time and sort of play with that and have fun.
Hmm. So are your characters consistent across the board? Are there themes that are consistent across the board, or are they all unique?
I mean, my main characters have a lot in common with each other and with myself. I tend to, I write in first person, and a lot of the time, I just come out and sort of in the editing process, my job is to distance them from me and to give them characteristics and define them so that they're not just, me,
Mm,
doing another book with different side characters. Thematically, I think I thought about this before, and I think thematically I always come down to like an interrogation of perfection, whether someone is trying to be the perfect version of themselves, whether they meet someone that they think is perfect and like, because they idealize them, or whether like what they're looking for, like what they're trying to accomplish, like they're looking for the perfect career or they're looking for the perfect, relationship with their friend or their family member or their romantic partner. I
mm,
think I'm just always thinking about like how we conceptualize what is perfect and what is, actually real and healthy, but not
mm.
perfect.
Yeah. My first response to that was like, wow, that's a really common YA theme. And then I
Hmm.
was like, no, adults struggle with that all the time too.
Yeah. Well, one of the books I've written is it's an adult romance and it's about a romance author whose character comes to life. Like the main love interest in his romance book comes to life and he's the perfect man. And so, the main character is like, oh, this is great. But then thinking about, oh, what about my best friend who, is imperfect, but like brings out the best parts of me and sort of, there's a very obvious lesson there. But for me, it was very interesting to sort of write a character who is quote unquote perfect and
Mm,
then compare them to someone who is real and loving.
mm. How do you make the quote unquote perfect character relatable too?
Yeah, well, I mean, I made him like funny and hot. So it's, at least in my mind, he's funny. But I also it was really interesting, like, things that aren't concrete in the book within the book. So like if he didn't say specifically where this guy's from, like he changes based on location. And so like there are like multiple iterations of him. So it's not just the same guy, like he's changing every time and then every time they meet, it is a meet cute.
Mm,
And so like he's mostly there so that I can play with genre conventions
mm,
and sort of wink at the reader and be like, in another book, he would be real, but in this book, we're acknowledging that he's sort of a stock character of the
mm,
perfect love interest.
mhm. So did your writing career start in college or was there precursors to it?
My career, I think so, but I did try to write a book when I was 9.
Mm,
Yeah, I was, third. I think that's the third grade, or
yeah, around there.
maybe I started second grade, ended up in third grade, whatever. But no, I tried to write a book back then, and it just obviously didn't go anywhere. I wrote it on a desktop computer, and then the
Yeah.
computer sort of broke, and then I never recovered it, and
Oh
wouldn't.
wow.
I would want to just to like see what I had written, but
Hmm.
obviously, like it was never going to go anywhere, and I think I just loved the audacity of being a 9-year-old and being like, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
And then yeah, didn't come back to it for another 9 years, starting in college.
Wow. Yeah. When I first started my publishing business back in 2022, my mom actually sent me a book or a box of my first books that I
Oh,
wrote. And so one of them is this like laminated, like 5-page thing of like the dog and the cat go to the park and they have
yeah, yeah. The title of my book was Max and His Friends.
hmm, there you go.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what was that screenplay about in college?
Yeah, so I started another screenplay, only got like 30 pages in, and then I started this other screenplay called Bro.
Mm,
And Bro was basically me as a college freshman rewriting my senior year so that it was more dramatic and fun.
okay.
And it's basically Mean Guys. Like instead of Mean Girls, it's Mean Guys. And it's this kid who's like just like a normal sort of nerdy kid with his friend group that he loves, based on my friend group at like in high school. And he becomes friends with the star quarterback, and then the star quarterback starts inviting him to parties, and like he becomes cool, and he sort of ditches his old group of friends, including the best friend, the girl that he has always been in love with. And then she's sort of drafted also into this popular realm. and starts dating one of the football players, and and then sort of like, oh no, what was the point of getting popular if like I don't get her?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, that was the screenplay. And I don't think it's too bad, but again, it was written while I was pretending to be straight and trying to make that work.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of unintentional homoerotic tension between, these two friends, like the main
Sure.
guy and the football player. Like it's off the wall, like the amount of tension between them. And that makes it a bad book because it's not true. You know what I mean? Like it's not true to the emotional core of these characters. Like if I were being true to it, they would have ended up together, or at least one of them would have gotten their hearts broken.
Yeah. Yeah. Why a screenplay? Like, why did you choose that format?
I still want to be a screenwriter. I still want to, write movies and eventually TV and stuff. It's just I've always loved reading, but I've always just loved going to the movies and the
Mm.
the ceremony of it all, the event of it
Mm.
all. Um, Also, like screenwriting really fits my style. I'm not a very flowery writer.
Mm.
I like stage directions. I like dialogue. Also, like, screenplays like 20K words, which I feel is like just like a really great length for, it not being too long, but also feeling like you really created something that's substantial.
Mm.
But it's not taking everything from you the way a novel does, because, novels are at least three times, the length of a screenplay.
Hmm. Hmm. I've been wanting to dip my toes into screenplays, but I have to learn how to condense myself first.
Yeah, no, I have the problem with novels where I have to, every time I'm an underwriter, and so every time I finish a draft, I have to beef it up in the next edit because there are things I left out.
Yeah, yeah. I usually aim for 90,000 words in my fantasy manuscripts, and I usually get around 80, and then I have to beef it up to like 92,
Mm,
95 in the
yeah,
editing process. But 80, I think, is my default for some reason.
yeah.
So, was this expected to go into writing as you progressed through college, or was it a complete career 180 in your opinion?
I was trying to do two things at once. When I was in college, I was pre-med, and
Mm.
so for the first 3 semesters, I was writing this screenplay slash novel, and I was doing my pre-med courses and trying to like get all the requirements that I had to get. And then, sophomore year, I sort of self-sabotaged on purpose
Mm.
and almost failed my anatomy class, got put on academic probation. And
Wow.
then I was like, well, I can't be a doctor, so I have to go full in with this writing thing. And so my goal was to get a book deal before I graduated college. Because I was like,
Wow.
the only way I'm not going to look like a failure in terms of the doctor thing is if I have like another career ready to go,
Wow.
like fresh out of college. And so that didn't happen. I was looking at Veronica Roth and I was like, I'll just do that. Like that, like I was looking at the author of The Duff. What is I forget. But she was, I think, 19 when the book came
Wow.
out. And then so I'm looking at these authors, I'm like, oh, it's possible, it's possible. And then so I finished the book junior year and I queried it, and then I graduated and I didn't have an agent, and I was like, oh, I failed.
Mm.
Um, but I just and the reason too that I like, it wasn't just the fact that the screenplay had so much voiceover that I started adapting it into a book. It was also the fact that I was like, oh, it's really hard to get a screenplay made. It's really hard to get
Mm.
an agent for a screenplay, but you can get an agent for a novel like by just emailing someone. And so part of that pivot was, oh, I'm going to release the book, I'm going to sell the movie rights, I'm going to write the screenplay, and that's how I'm going to get my foot in the door when it comes to screenwriting. Uh, and that also did not work. Even when I did publish This Is Why They Hate Us, like that's not what happened.
Wow.
But it worked out for someone else I know. Well, not know, but me and Earl and the Dying Girl.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's actually a piece of advice that I've been hearing a lot lately is if you want to get into movies, if you want your IP to be turned into something on screen, write the book first.
Yeah. It's just, obviously it is also a shot in the dark, but it's you can sort of see the path there.
Hmm.
So I think what is Jesse Andrews, I think is the author. But yeah, he wrote Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, and then came across someone's desk, and then he got to write the screenplay, and I'm just like, that's the dream.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So why did you choose traditional?
I think along with my dreams of like screenwriting and everything, I think to me that just felt like it would be the easiest
Mm.
in terms of going down that path. I will say also like, you know, I was doing all this in college. I was in college from 2011 to 2015.
Mm.
And I think even then, obviously there was self-publishing, but like back then, like I just didn't know about it. And it
Hmm.
wasn't as,
It wasn't as prevalent.
no, like
Yeah.
I really didn't like I couldn't name a single back then I couldn't name a single self-published author. Um and like I'm trying to think now like who would have been around at that time and it was just yeah, like some of the major people that we think of now who went from self-publishing to traditional, like it was way after I
Yeah, I
graduated
can only
college.
really think of business books, not fiction.
Yeah. And then, at that point, like after the first book died, in the query trenches, I sort of was like, well, I need to do this though.
Mm.
Like it became like I have to conquer this beast. And so it wasn't necessarily the best thing for those two books that came after, maybe, but I was just sort of like, no, but I tried to do this, I failed, and so I will do this until I succeed.
Mm.
Because that's kind of just how I am. So it wasn't even a thought at any point during the horrible, horrible years of querying like
Yeah.
it wasn't even a thought to like go another direction with it.
What was that fueled by? Like that determinism?
Partially the doctor thing, like
Hmm.
again, like I wanted my family and my friends to think like, I didn't throw away my opportunity to
Mm.
be successful, and I was just finding it a different way. So that was part of it, and I also just I wanted to connect with as many readers as possible.
Mm.
I did see what happened with, something like The Fault in Our Stars.
Mm.
I sort of saw like how many people connected with that book. I loved seeing the adaptation and just, the way that John Green like made a cameo in the movie and then like, I think it was cut from the final cut, but and then like him meeting like Taylor Swift. Like it just like seemed like really cool to be a very successful YA author in particular.
Mm.
And that, I was like, oh, well, traditional publishing can do that for me. Like they can put me into that machine of it all and sort of get me there.
Hmm.
Um, that's not how it worked out, obviously, but that was always what I was shooting for.
Mm. So that first book died in the query trenches. Is it
Hmm.
the second book that then ended up succeeding?
No.
Okay, all right.
So the first book, bro, died in the quarry trenches. I wrote a second book that also died in the trenches. Um, but that was the one where I really like I got a lot of good feedback about the writing, about the characters, but they didn't like the structure of it.
Mm.
Because the structure, it took place over 4 years. It was
Mm.
written in vignettes similar to The House on Mango Street.
Mm.
Some chapters were like a sentence long, although they weren't really chapters, they're more sections or whatever you want to call it. And I just knew that every single agent was going to ask me to rewrite it in a traditional way, and I didn't want to do that. So I moved
Mm.
on, and I was working on this third book, which started off as a screenplay, called Camp Values. So it's the second time I like had a screenplay, and I was like, I'm reverse adapting it into a book. So I'm working on Camp Values, and then I just hit a roadblock. Like I was almost done because I had the screenplay, so I had basically an outline of the story.
Hmm.
But there was this roadblock between, the first two-thirds and the last fourth of it. There's this
Mm.
tiny little sliver that I just couldn't get through. And it was during that time that I wrote This Is Why They Hate Us, like very quickly, very underwritten. It was around 52,000 words after the first draft. And I just wrote it very quickly. And then I was like, it's queer. I want my grandma to read my first book. I I'm not gonna pursue publishing this right now. So I put it in the drawer, went back to Camp Values. Uh finished that, queried it. That one died in the query trenches. And so the reason I finally came back to This Is Why They Hate Us is because I had three failed books and I couldn't have four.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how has it gone so far?
You know, um, I don't mean this in the most depressing way possible, but I will say that like getting an agent, going on submission, selling your book for me, selling my book, uh, it's sort of a series of moments where you realize your dreams won't come true.
Mm,
And I mean like your wildest dreams, right? Like
mm,
I accomplished my dream of traditionally publishing a book, having it find its readers. Like a lot of beautiful things have come from this, obviously, but your wildest dreams, right? So, um, your agent saying, "We don't need to work on this. It's perfect. Let's submit it now." Like I spent 9 months editing with my agent, and it was hard. It was really hard, and part of me was like, "Can you even do this?" And then we went on submission, and I envisioned 24 hours later an editor being like, "I want to buy this," and then 48 hours later, the second editor being like, "I want to buy it too," and then like going to auction and getting all this money and paying off my student loan debt and being able to like live just being a writer based off that first advance. But then reality sets in, and no one responded for 3 months, and then they were all no's except for one offer to revise and resubmit. And then we did the revise and resubmit, and we got the deal, and it was just that one person who wanted it, and it was barely enough to sort of cover my rent for a couple months. And then COVID hit, and then like, it's just all these things sort of like my again wildest dreams crumbling in front of me, while
mm,
also like feeling like some victories and being like I finally like am getting a book out there. Um, and realizing too that I could make things happen myself. Like
mm,
I didn't just have to rely on my publisher to do for it what they think it deserved. Like I
mm,
could give it what I actually think it deserved and have that sometimes work out and sometimes not.
hmm. Yeah, I've heard traditional publishing is hard. And
Yeah.
I think it's funny that you said at the beginning of this that you thought it was the easy route.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, it has its pros and its cons. And I think if you do that for self-publishing and traditional publishing, like it's the same thing where you just like you have a long column of pros and you have a long column of cons. And for me, like I still, I don't regret it at all. Especially because, and I wish people talked about this more, where the type of thing you're writing, um, like that like there are different pros and cons for self-publishing and traditional publishing. Like for YA, like we're trying to get it to teenagers, but there are gatekeepers, right? Like there are teachers and parents, and so traditional has an in route with libraries, school libraries, like all these ways that they can reach teens. And if you're self-publishing, it's really hard to market to them and get to them, and you know, um, so I think for in the future, if I were to self-publish, it would probably be something for adults
Mm,
because I'm really just trying to find the adult readers and not having to go through sort of a middleman in a way.
hmm, hmm. Well, let's talk about marketing with traditional publishing
Yeah.
because everyone asks about how much you have to do as an author. So
Hmm.
take me through that.
Um, well, I'm on all social media. Like I'm still on Twitter, and I still call it Twitter.
I still call it Twitter.
Uh,
I refuse to call it X. We are not talking
yeah,
about that.
yeah. No, I will never cave in that regard. I still technically post on Facebook because my Instagram is tied to it. I post on TikTok. I'm on Threads. I'm on Blue Sky. Like I just, you know, I'm one of those people where it's not really exhausting to me. I just do it when I want to do it, and that happens to be every day, because I get bored and I'll scroll and then I'll respond to something, and I never know like what's going to take off. Like there certain things where I just complained or like just featured an aspect of my book, like talked about it a little bit, and it like got some traction. And for me, it's like it's always worth it, even if there's like one sale. Like
Mm,
if I make a video and I'm like, oh, wasted my time on that one. Like if one person says that they bought it because of that, I'm like, okay, that was worth it. Because like I never know what the next person who reads it, like I never know what they can do to help the book. Whether they post a review on Goodreads that get someone else to read it, or if they post a TikTok, or if they just tell their best friend, and even they lend them their copy. Like that's just another person who like loves my book and could talk about it in some way. So I'm on all social media and I'm just posting as again as much as I want to, which just happens to be a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sort of like, on there. And I try and make myself take breaks. So I have the opposite problem, I think, from some people who have to force themselves to get on. And like I have to
Hmm.
force myself to like step away and like sort of not be constantly there.
Hmm. Do you prefer text-based or video-based?
Honestly, I think video. I think anyone who's listening to this, I think you can tell like I typically talk very quickly. I ramble, I go on tangents. Like that's like my style. And so in videos, you can capture that and there are people on TikTok who go, not to me, but like I've seen them with other people and they say you speak at the right speed for my brain.
Yeah.
The people who are putting like 2 times speed on their audiobooks, I'm like, those are my people. And I can sort of like make like say an aside and be like, oh, very quickly about this thing, and then come back to my main point. I think it's just easier to interpret me via video. I don't always like seeing my face, and so there are videos that I'm focused on something else. I'm focused on the book. I'm focused on, just I'm not the subject of the camera. And so those are helpful sometimes. And to build those up, sort of, stockpile them and then release them on a day where I don't want to film and like show my face and like know that I'm dead in the face. Because I've done that too. I've recorded videos where I'm just like I have zero energy and I can tell. Like months later, I go, who is that? Like who is that person?
Yeah, I've noticed that I speak slower for YouTube videos than TikTok videos.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I think it's a different audience too.
For sure. And then, YouTube videos are longer. And so I've started getting into that too, into AuthorTube and BookTube. And I'll put those on like 1.5 speed, just because they're longer and I feel like I'm not missing anything. But with TikToks, I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, I can watch the whole thing on normal speed.
Hmm. So, is there any strategy behind your posting, or is it literally just responding to things?
Um, I'm not really a scheduler. I'm not really a consistent poster on purpose. Um, and I think with TikTok, especially, like it's so important to hop on trends,
Mm.
like because they die out so soon. So if like there's a trending audio, I'm like, I got to figure out a way to use this in the next few days, or else it's just going to bypass me. Or if like and I know when I'm late on a trend because like I'll do it and then like it won't get any response and I'm like okay like I missed the wave, right? And so especially with TikTok, like it's so important to be on it when it comes to something that's trending. And then typically my reels are just the TikToks that I'm not embarrassed by, or even if I'm like a little bit embarrassed by, but they did a little well on TikTok, like I'll throw them on Insta and that's sort of without the watermark. And then I'm like, that's my strategy for Insta is to just sort of have that be a backup of sorts with my TikTok, especially because TikTok has been banned, before, not for very long, but that has happened. So not a lot of strategy, just sort of quantity, not
Hmm.
quality.
Hmm.
Because even the things that I think are so funny or like are so, such a great way to market my book, like those will flop after I've taken the time to make them. And you can just never tell with that algorithm. I think I get more consistent views on Instagram, but with TikTok, it's sort of it's all or nothing, right? It's 300 views or it's at least 30,000, which,
Hmm.
again, even with 30,000 views, there have been times where I didn't see any change in book sales.
Hmm.
But then there are some that really take off, and those are like sort of keep me going.
How has been your experience on Blue Sky?
It was better. I think Blue Sky is kind of dying right now.
Mm.
Um, I there used to be a lot more engagement, but I think Threads may have won the battle.
Mm.
Um, or maybe it's just because Threads is so rage baity.
Mm,
Like the part of the reason I'm on Threads so often is because I like every few scrolls on my For You instead of my following, like I'll just get angry and I'll respond to something. And then like I'll get replies and I'll get interactions. And then so I'm like, oh, like that wasn't for nothing. And so like Threads is really good at rage baiting me and then keeping me on there with, when I'm like righteously angry and then people sort of, will support me. And I'm like, if I don't know, it feels very like I know it's gross, like I know it's not great, but it's just doing its job of keeping me engaged better than Blue Sky.
mm,
But I do love Blue Sky. Like it's very peaceful and it's a lot of
mm,
people that I like on there, but it's just not, there's no virality to it. Like I haven't
mm.
really seen things reaching wide audiences on there. It's more quiet for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's honestly a nice respite from a lot of social media platforms there these days. Like
Hmm.
there is a lot of political stuff in my Blue Sky feed these days, but it's not as rage baity as you said.
Yeah, Blue Skies typically it's like everything I agree with. And then
Yeah,
Threads, it's the opposite. It's like everything that I just hate with a passion. It's like
yeah,
it's right there in front of me.
yeah. So your personal marketing effort is all social media content based, sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, if I can get in front of people in person, I I don't consider myself an extrovert, but I think compared to a lot of authors, I'm more outgoing than them.
Mm,
Like I do like attention, I do like, feedback that's immediate. So, I just did like the San Antonio Book Festival
mm,
last weekend. And, I was moderating, but somehow like I still it just happens where you sort of talk about your own process sometimes and then, they had copies of my book there and people bought it. And I like, yeah, so I like moderating events. I like doing panels. And I've been very lucky that that's still coming up after 2 years of the book being out. Like I'm doing uh, a specifically Latino book festival in LA in
mm,
September, Los Libros. And like that just came up out of nowhere. And it's like, okay, I get to go in front of people and pitch myself and pitch the book. And so in that way, like the book's not dead and it's still reaching people. It feels like it still has a life.
hmm.
But yeah, no, social media is like, consistent. Like I can do it whenever I want, and sort of reach people.
So you think those events are from people finding your social media? Do you know how they find you?
Um, I, I think it depends on the festival or the conference. Well, the San Antonio Book Festival, I was a panelist 2 years ago because I complained on Twitter about how my publisher didn't submit me to the Texas Book Festival, which I could have walked to.
That's
So
great.
like I was angry, complaining on Twitter. San Antonio Book Festival said, "Hey, submit to our festival." So I did, and then they featured me the following month or whatever.
Mm,
So like that was a direct result of me just complaining on Twitter. And then in other ways, I think, it is social media, but also I think it's my connection with other authors, and I
mm,
think that's never something to discount. There are authors, especially like within the queer community, within the Latino community, like we look out for each other,
mm,
and so the Los Libros festival that I'm doing in September, like my friend Johnny did the year before. And
mm,
so I don't know if it's because Johnny, like if they asked Johnny and they specifically were like, oh yeah, Aaron's great. Or if, they saw that Johnny and I just did an event a couple days ago. And we do that all the time. So it's like, I don't know if they saw that and they're like, oh, like that's another Latino author that we know about. And that's something with traditional publishing too, I think, is like if they see that, they'll be like, okay, well, we know that we can sort of, get a little bit of publicity behind it. We can get some support from the publisher. We can sort of, know that that there are channels to request things and all that sort of thing. I think for organizers, it's easier a lot of the time to have a publisher backing an author,
mm.
even if it's again a lot later than when the book came out.
Yeah, so that segues into my next question is how has the marketing efforts gone on the publisher's side of things?
I mean, I will complain. I will get to that. But I do want to say that a lot of what publishers do is sort of behind the scenes.
Mm,
I know that for the first year of release with the hardcover, I was in every Barnes and Noble that I walked into. I know that my book was at libraries because people would, borrow it and send a picture. And, I saw like I love seeing the library plastic.
yeah, yeah.
And so it's like they're doing a lot of things behind the scenes where indie bookstores as well. Like they are doing that. They didn't really submit me for any festivals,
Mm,
so that was annoying. And especially because like I know I'm the type of person where like give me the mic. Give me
mm,
the mic, I'll make them laugh. I'll pitch like let me I can do that for sure. So like I organized my own, book tour. And then they just sort of sent the books so that they were
mm,
there. But they do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but there are things that they just didn't do that I really was annoyed by.
mm,
They didn't do a Goodreads giveaway, which I think would have been a good idea because I did drum up a lot of interest before the pre-order links came out. Like I drummed
mm.
up interest with Goodreads, and so I feel like if they had done the giveaway, not everyone wins, but they would know that the book had come out.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. I asked them, I was just complaining about this today on Threads. Um, I got blurbs from like Adam Silvera, Aidan Thomas, Ryan
Mm,
Douglas, Adib Khurram, Abdi Nazemian, like all these, like really respectable, some of them like very successful YA authors. And I got these blurbs through my personal relationships with them. And I asked them for blurb graphics that I could post. And they said, sure. And they made 4 out of 5. And when I asked for the fifth one, they said they didn't have the resources. And I was like, that is wild to me because this is obviously a Canva graphic and you can go in and change the text and send that to me in 5 seconds, maybe 10. And the person
wow.
whose blurb that they left out was Aidan Thomas. And I'm like, Aidan Thomas is a New York Times bestselling young adult author who has a queer Latino audience. I'm like, you want this person, like we want to reach their audience. And so I was like, that was wild to me. Again, they did not pitch me for really any festivals or conferences. Um, they dropped the ball a lot.
Mm,
And I think it had to do with the fact that I had 3 editors, right? Like I was on my third editor before This Is Why They Hate Us came out. She hadn't touched the text of the book. She wasn't really like as attached to it as another editor would have been if they had seen it from the beginning and had, a hand in changing it. So I just felt like forgotten, like lost in the shuffle. But they sort of gave me the basis to market myself
mm,
by like having the possibility of distribution. Like when I pitched myself for NCTE, which is a conference for English teachers.
mm.
Like when I pitched myself for that and I got on a panel and I asked them, hey, I'm going to be there. Can I do a signing with this organization that the Latinx Kid Lit Book Festival? I was like, they want me to do a signing. How could you help? They're like, we got you 30 copies. And I thought they meant like 30 copies that I had to sell. And I was like, I would sell it. But at this conference, everything's free. So what they meant was, we're giving you 30 copies of your book that you can hand out to educators for free.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm so glad I did this because, that's 30 people, the gatekeepers we're talking about, who can get them to kids if they like it, or who could just be fans themselves and recommend it. So yeah, they're sort of the infrastructure, and then I'm sort of the salesperson, and I had to like go do that.
I love that analogy. They're the infrastructure, I'm the salesperson. Because I think a lot of people assume if they go the trad pub route that they will be the salespeople too.
Hmm.
And that's not how it works.
Not for me.
So now the question is, has your marketing strategies changed at all in the current political environment?
I haven't changed, but the response has. I've been having a lot of trouble. Um, I've been having a lot of trouble getting things out there,
Mm,
especially on TikTok ever since the ban happened the first
mm,
time. Like I'm limited by like when I say the word bi or bisexual, it gets flagged. It's under review. And then when it does go live, it sort of doesn't reach as many people. So talking about anything queer, anything bi is a no-go. I mean, I still do it and see what happens, but it typically doesn't reach the audience it did before. Also, like one of the main characters in my book is Palestinian, and so anytime I talk about that, like very, it's not going to go very far, and it might be, flagged and might reach the wrong audience. So I haven't changed. I just wonder how that's going to work in the future with the second book. Because I have, a good number of followers on TikTok, like over 50K, and it's just not reaching a lot of people. And I see that with people with even bigger accounts, like friends of mine who have over 100K and their videos are getting 1,000 views, because there's a target on their back because they're a person of color, because they're queer, because um, they talk about political things. Like it is very different, but I haven't changed because, I think even if I did, like I might have already branded myself in a way where it wouldn't help at this point to change.
Yeah. Yeah. I have been in the same boat. I write queer open door romance,
Mm,
and I have been thinking about my press strategies this year and
hmm.
how much press I want to bring to myself at this point in
Yeah,
time.
yeah. It's a consideration, like who you are as a person and who you are as a writer and a brander and a marketer, for sure.
Mhm. Well, overall, in this marketing journey, what is the biggest lesson that you would tell our audiences?
Um, I think that if people really love something or hate something, if they feel very strongly about something, you can always use that. And timing is everything. So those are the
Mhm.
two things. It's like something that has a built-in audience and then also the timing of it all. So like my number one advice is like find something that you can use to pitch your book, that's like already really popular and just see where it goes. And so I try to do that with everything. I think I've been most successful on TikTok, uh, barring one major exception, but like by associating myself with like bigger franchises.
Mm,
So like I'm not the hugest fan of Heartstopper, both the graphic novels and the TV show. Like I just it's not really for me. Like it doesn't
sure.
touch me the way that it touches other people. But I'll be damned if I'm like not gonna use Heartstopper. Like every time they drop a trailer for the new season, every time they release a new season, every time Kit Connor's in the news, every time like I'll put out a video that just compares my book to Heartstopper, use the hashtag and see, how that blows up.
Mm,
So I'm sort of riding their coattails and I'm like, I'm shameless about that. Same thing with Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's
mm,
like Red, White, and Royal Blue features a chaotic bisexual Mexican main character who falls in love with someone who's way too put together. I'm like, I have the teen version of that in my book. And so, when the trailer for the movie came out, when the movie came out, when the book was, really popular, or it still is, but like that's sort of an evergreen thing for me is to compare that as well. And I try it with, XO Kitty, because I'm like, oh, she's a bi teen with multiple love interests of, various genders. And so like let's try XO Kitty, let's try when Bottoms the movie came out, I was like chaotic high school. Like I'm like let's just and then the official Bottoms TikTok like commented on one of my TikToks, even though it didn't do very well. It's like 3K views or something, but they still comment. I was like okay, like I'm just trying to like you grab onto whatever thing I can to sort of be like, hey, if you like this, you'll like this. Just basically like a human version of an algorithm that's trying to get you to buy more stuff.
yeah, yeah. I mean, comp titles are so important.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about the rise of the gatekeepers lately too. You mentioned
Hmm.
that earlier here,
Yeah.
is how there's been more of a resurgence of people who curate things for other people because of how much content there is out there nowadays.
Yeah, no, I guess that's something we haven't really touched on, but has been crucial as well is, meeting influencers, like genuinely building community with them and having them support you to their audiences, right? Um, like there early on, like on TikTok that before my book ever came out, I was like, okay, I'm friends with these queer book talkers, and like I'm gonna send like I'm gonna not my publisher, I'm gonna send them an arc with a message, and it's because like they feel comfortable giving me their address now because we know each other a little bit from being online, or I'd meet up with them in person and be like, oh my God, like that is super helpful to have people in those places because then influencers know influencers, and you know it you know I feel like I am a little bit of a bad luck charm for a lot of these people because again, like someone with 150 followers, if they post about my book, it'll get like a couple thousand views, and it'll be
Mm,
like the lowest one in the
mm,
grid where you're looking. Like I'm like, it's fine, it's fine. Like popular things become more popular, so I get that. But I do appreciate the support. And again, it's the feeling of like if just one more person knows about me now, if just one more person knows about my book, like that's worth
hmm
it.
hmm And I think it's also key that you talked about the captive audience earlier as well. And I think that's also true with the influencer conversation. I recently came across a story where The Great Gatsby was considered a failure during
Hmm.
his lifetime.
Hmm.
It only became popular when it was distributed through the US Army during World War II. And that's like a built-in captive audience. And that's why we now consider it one of the great pieces of literature of the 20th century.
Yeah, yeah, Great Gatsby used to be my favorite book of all time, but then I read Giovanni's Room and I was like, okay, that's my favorite book of all time. But I love that book, and yeah, so like I remember the last time I read it, I read the introduction to it and they talked about that, like how it wasn't very popular during his lifetime. And I just think about that with my book, and I was having a conversation with a friend, and like, we talk about this a lot as writers. We're like, all we can control is the words. All we can do is our best to make it great. Um, but my friend was saying, it's excellence that endures. And so I all I can do is like focus on my craft and what I'm trying to do, and everything else is like sort of out of my control. But I do want to feel like that I'm active, like I'm not just sort of saying, oh my God, like, my publisher doesn't believe in me, so I guess this book is dead.
Mm,
um, it means a lot to me to sort of again make small but perceptible change in my
mm,
own career. And I can see that. I can go to my portal, my sales portal, and see like, okay, if I had a good week on TikTok, I have a good week in sales. I
mm.
can see the literal number on the TikTok shop of copies that I've sold because I'm the only one pitching my book on TikTok. I'm like, I can see how many copies I've sold, and that's over 1,000 copies. And that's like just because I turned the camera around and I said something dumb, or I, just talked about my book and I just put it out there, and people supported it. Um, like you know, it's all I can do.
Mm. I mean, that's autonomy and choice, right?
Yeah. And well, and something that I envy with people who self-publish, like a lot of them do, like they sell on the TikTok shop and they can do signed copies. They do like personalized. They have like really cool like goodies that come along with it. Like I wish I could do stuff like that, but I think legally I'm not allowed to.
Oh,
And
wow.
so yeah, so like the way I got it on the TikTok shop was messaging an independent bookseller and
Mm,
saying, "Hey, you have all these books on your shop. Can you add mine? And then I'm going to attach it to my videos. Like I get a commission, I get the royalty, you get are getting your shop out there, like you're making money from, like it's everyone's happy.
yeah.
Even my publisher who has done nothing to help it on TikTok. Like I sort of had to find a workaround for not being able to sell it, and I just had to, because I don't think I can even buy like wholesale copies of my book.
Mm,
So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go through this bookseller, and that's how it's worked. Like if I
mm.
didn't do that, like that's 100, not 100, that's 1,000 people who wouldn't have bought the book.
I mean, that's a perfect solution for people who don't want to do shipping and fulfillment themselves, too.
Yeah, that's also a great part of it. Yeah. Because I do see those videos as well. They're sort of like, packing, and I'm like, oh my God, it took that long to do one.
Yeah, even though I do indie, I don't want to do shipping and fulfillment myself unless it's like art copies because
Yeah.
I don't have room in my apartment, y'all. Like, if I do have room in my apartment, it's gonna be covered in dog hair.
I don't, yeah. I feel like there are some readers who would be like, oh,
Yeah,
but I get
right.
what you
Do you
mean.
want some
Like it's,
allergies with your book?
yeah, yeah, no, that's funny.
Yeah. Well, this is powerful stuff. Anything you want to add before we start wrapping up?
Oh, I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. Um, I think I have learned a lot from the beginning. So I think, if I ever get a chance to promote a second book, like there are a lot of things that I will do differently having learned from the first time. And so it's just a learning process and it's different for every individual. And so it's a double learning process,
Mm,
finding out what works and then what works for you.
Well, I mean, that's a perfect opening for people to reach out and ask you questions about what you would do differently if you get those questions.
Yeah, no, totally open to that. I will say like, you know, part of my marketing too, I think at one point was like going to indie bookstores and being like, hey, like, if they didn't have a copy of my book, being like, hey, like, I'm an author, like, but I didn't see mine, and like maybe you have one in the back, and they're like, no, and I'm like, oh, I'll buy this book, and then I'm like, okay, well, would you ever consider stocking it? And they'd be like, sometimes yes, or they'd be like, email me most of the time. But it's sort of that reciprocity of it all, like genuine relationships. Like the authors I asked to blurb my book were friends. The book talkers who talked about my books, like they were friends first. I supported an indie bookstore before asking them, to like stock my book. Like I have a relationship with my local indie bookstore and I get them business and they get me business. And it's sort of this, yeah, reciprocity, this mutualism. So I think that's something to keep in mind. It's like, you're marketing to people and the people who help you are also people. So we just all want to feel like appreciated and not taken advantage of and feel like we're genuinely like helping each other.
Hmm. I love that. That's a perfect note to end on. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts, feelings, insights, stories with us as well. We'd love to know how reading has impacted you in your lives, writing has impacted you in your lives, all of the above. And please do let us know if you have any questions. We'd be happy to answer them. We use a lot of lingo in these podcasts that you may or may not have the glossary to, so we're happy to decode it if you need it. Special thanks to Erin for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Yeah, so please comment, like, subscribe below, and check out Linktree/Clairejoyance for all of my links. And then where can folks find out more about you?
So, like I said, I'm on all social media. I think the best place to go is probably my website. So it's aaronaceves.com, AARONHACEVES.com. And then there's a contact page, and you can send me an email there, or you can go to any of my social media, which is Aaron Aceves or Aaron H. Aceves usually.
Perfect. And I'll make sure those links are easily accessible in the show notes.
Perfect.
Until next time, please remember that you all have extraordinary stories to share, and we're rooting for you as you use them to change the world for the better. Take care, everyone.